I'd like to welcome everybody to the public safety meeting on July 9th. Call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve the June 11th meeting minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. No public comments, no ordinances and resolutions. The first item for discussion will be HPD strategy for Country Hills Golf Course regarding sledding. So Chief Jones, if we decide to close the golf course, tell me how you're gonna enforce that and what we could look forward to if we do close it.
So some of you saw from Public Works Committee, this is proposed recommendations and enforcement plan. I'm going to give everybody a copy. There's one, if you saw the previous one, there's a change, one change to that. And that, I think you got one in your original. Anybody else? You need more comments? I'm just going to see those down. No, I've got one. You got? I brought plenty, just try to be prepared. I think there's two of them there. So what our recommendation are is posting no trespassing signs along the outer boundaries of the golf course year round. And the reality is nobody should be on the golf course unless they're a registered golfer anyway. They don't have business being on the golf course. And that would cover UTVs, just people being out on the golf course, you know, four-wheelers, anything like that where they shouldn't be on the golf course to begin with. So I think that will help year round. Also, posting temporary no sledding signs during a snow event, especially up in those areas where they like to sled. So posting those where they're clearly visible. What that's going to do is allow us, if we do have a complaint or the officers find somebody there, or somebody from the golf course calls it in, then people can't say they didn't know that it previously been approved. I mean, it's clearly posted, no trespassing, no sledding. They know. And then to assist with that, providing public notice through the city's website, social media, the golf course website. I think I'll have a website there advising citizens there's no trespassing or sledding on the golf course. And then one of our suggestions is possibly keeping someone at the golf course around the clock during a snow event, so that they can advise HPD. You know, they can also give somebody a warning and tell them, hey, you're not supposed to be out here. There's no sledding allowed. And if they have any issues, they notify us. We're going to send officers right out there. But we will do like we did last time and do a directed patrol plan to get officers to check the area as they're available. Obviously, during the snow event, we've got a lot of other stuff going on too. So, you know, we will get them out there as often as we can to check the area. They just can't be out there all the time. You know, I know we had previously talked about leaving the gates open, but obviously I think with this, if we do this, we keep the gates closed. So the plan would be that the sector cars or other available units will make direct patrols of the area during a snow event. Again, understanding that there's going to be other calls that will, you know, very possibly take priority over that. Anybody that's found on the golf course in violation of that can be charged through, obviously, trespassing violations are going to go either through general sessions court or juvenile court. That's a state court charge. If there's other things like littering or whatever, that's city court violation. Illegal parking will be enforced as normal with citations issued for a violation of the parking ordinance. But everybody's got to understand that parking is allowed on city streets in the city of Hendersonville. So we can't just arbitrarily say you can't park on the side of the road, you know, unless we can articulate that, you know, it's a violation of our ordinance. So it's during certain times. Obviously, if they're blocking access to somebody's driveway, that's citable offense, and we can do that. Or if they're parked within so many feet of a stop sign and some other things. And that's also on there for the enforcement plans, keeping the golf course gates locked when there's not an operation, which I think you and I discussed that previously. So
How feasible do you think this is gonna be, knowing that when we get any amount of snow, you have one wreck after another? Do you think this is something that you can enforce? And how are the officers gonna get way back there to that hill?
They're gonna do what they did this previous year, and that's walk. I mean, that's what it's gonna take, and we're willing to do that. I mean, but somebody mentioned, I think you offered maybe using the golf cart, but our problem with that is I don't want an officer getting hurt driving the golf cart on those trails when there's snow and ice on them.
And I'm not sure they would operate on those.
Yeah, wouldn't even
in those
probably make it.
conditions.
So for us, it's just they're gonna have to walk it. If there's wrecks occurring, then that's gonna be lower on the priority list than if nothing's going on and they can go out there and check it. And, hopefully what we've seen is in evening or overnight hours, the call volume seems to slow down some, so that gives them more opportunity to check those areas. But, I can't say 100% how many times they're gonna be out there. I think if they go out there at some point and start writing citations, the word's gonna get around fairly quickly that they're serious. So
How does everybody feel about citations being issued out there?
Not great.
Mayor?
Yeah, not great. But I think the average 14-year-old, below that is probably gonna leave when they get told and reminded. I think other than that, you might have to write some citations for some older folks. So I'm okay with that. It probably won't take many.
Yeah, I am also more comfortable with writing a citation for an adult.
Well-
Kids, they don't have any sense anyway, so.
the reality is some of them, once they're told, they're gonna wait till we leave and show back up. And the reality is our officers sure are not gonna be able to keep going out there and telling the same people, you can't be sledding here, which is, I will promise you before it's over, there'll wind up being juvenile citations issued.
I understand,
So,
and it is what it is. What about the UTV? I know that depending on the nature of the snow event, getting it over there could be not feasible, but
it's not for us because I know Mr. Gilly had offered the use of the parks one, and that means they're gonna have to go to probably Grace Creek Park, get it, drive it all the way out there.
put it on a trailer.
And yeah, that's just, and I'll be honest with you, if it's snow and ice on the roads, I don't particularly care for them pulling a trailer
I
around.
know.
So, that's how we wind up with a trailer in the back end of a patrol car. So, unless we had one already staged out there that the officers had the keys to that they could access, that's a possibility.
If we know snow's coming, maybe we can do that.
But
Because we do, as a city, own that UTV, so if we know snow's coming, would the parks need it during the snow event? Oh, I didn't realize you were in here.
Yeah, I mean, we can get one out there.
Okay.
Don't need
That's
it
what we
during
need.
the snow?
Hope not. Park will be closed.
That would cut down on the time for an officer to walk all the way up there
oh, absolutely,
and walk all the way back.
it would. It absolutely.
And what are your thoughts on this?
I'm gonna back up just a minute with an update, so everybody understands, I think, the choices that we had. We put 4 loads of sod on that fairway. We expect to have 2 more coming, so we're gonna spend $35,000 to $40,000 that we would like to spend on other things, but we're gonna spend it on that repair. And I think it comes down from the golf course's standpoint. If, we're in favor of what we've had to do this year of no sledding. If the city's in favor of sledding, then the city needs to figure out how to come up with that money when it's required to resod that fairway. And I think maybe we've gotten ourselves past that, but I want to tell you, those costs are continuing to be incurred out there. A couple of other comments I might offer. I'm not sure it's going to be feasible for us to use golf course employees out of hours and out of the scope of their work when they don't have a vehicle to get up and to that area, which is some distance from that clubhouse. I certainly see the golf course when we agree on the wording and the signs are made, putting the signs out. monitoring that the signs stay in place, which I think that's gonna be an issue, and putting up the additional no sledding signs when the weather warrants. I think, when we get ready to put those signs up, we need to contact the residents that ring that area that are gonna see a sign in their backyard. Some of them will accept it, and I guarantee you, some of them don't want it. They won't want to see it, but we need to tell them what we're doing, why we're doing it. And at the same time, we've already got eyes out there on the sledding, and that's the residents. And I think when we make that communication, we should encourage them, if they see sledding out there, that they should call it in and report it. The eyes are already there. And I guess, Andy, you got anything to add to those comments from golf course perspective?
No, I mean, you said it all. Keeping the gate locked was something I think has been a question mark. I think
Yeah.
at the Public Works Committee meeting, we talked about needing a resolution from BOMA to kind of basically authorize the police department to do what they're going to do. Because that'd probably be a PR nightmare to issue a citation to a 10-year-old and their dad.
Well, have we talked to the city attorney about the need? Is there a need, Chief, do you think, for some legislation to prohibit trespassing on city property?
I do not. So literally, it's kind of like the parks system. It's open to the public. However, once it's 10 o'clock at night, it's posted. The park is closed. You're not allowed to be in there. You're trespassing if you're in the park. We've physically charged people with trespassing in the park once the park is closed, and that goes to general sessions. There's no issue there because the trespassing laws are pretty clear, and there again, it's plainly posted for everybody to see what the park hours are. And so we've done that with Drakes Creek Park. We've charged people out of Memorial Park the same way. So once it's posted, the legislation is already in effect, state and city. What we need is just for the city to tell us which way we're going to go with this.
It's also in the law that they can write citations for using city property other than its intended use.
So question, this is a legal question. So if you write a ticket for trespassing, what is the proper court of jurisprudence?
General Sessions Court in Sumner County. For adults, juvenile court for those under 18.
Okay. And what's the fine associated with that?
That's up to the judge. A lot of times the judge will give a minimal fine,
Right.
but the court costs up there can easily hit $185, $200. So sometimes they'll impose a $10 fine plus court costs. So, and it just, it's dependent on the judge and the circumstances involved in that, especially if it's, let's say it's adults and we catch them out there with a four-wheeler. Well, we're probably going to wind up charging them depending on what we see when we get out there, not only with trespassing, but with vandalism. So then it's in the court's discretion, and so it's really, it's not like city court where it says for this offense or this fine.
Right.
General Sessions judges have a lot of discretion and leeway to impose fines and penalties.
So is there any way that we can prescribe the fines to go to city court? Because city court is limited to $50.
Will we have to do an ordinance? City
Well,
ordinance?
I don't know. That's a legal question.
So I would have to check the city ordinances to see, but I will tell you that for trespassing, it would be an entire whole new procedure for our officers, because when we charge a trespassing crime, we charge through state court. That's just how we've always done that.
Okay.
It's a misdemeanor offense in the state of Tennessee. And so, and then of course, city court, with the exception of traffic offenses, I don't know that city court has the jurisdiction to hear a juvenile offense.
Okay.
Because juveniles traffic offenses are very limited in their scope. Once you get into other offenses, we have to charge them through juvenile court. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What about if you felt a need, or your officers felt a need to charge with misuse of city property? What court is that?
misuse of city property would be under city court, and that, they,
A whole other thing of court fees for the people as well. So you would reserve that for a pretty extreme.
generally what we don't do, we do not charge through two different courts as a general rule. There's nothing in the law that says we cannot, but if we're having, in general, if we charge somebody and send them to one court, we don't want them having to go to two or three different courts.
Okay.
So we try to wrap it up in, and we feel like, so like on a trespassing charge, it's generally not appropriate to charge trespassing and misuse of city property by trespassing. That's, you get into kind of a strange area there. So, it would be appropriate to charge the general sessions court in that case. And
I
not
think
city
our
court.
goal is to charge people with a bunch of stuff.
No.
I mean, we
No.
just need to
That's why I
prevent,
said
we
city.
just need to
Right.
And
prevent.
hopefully we just charge one or two unfortunate people and word spreads and they stop.
One would hope.
And I know that the police had to be called to one of my neighborhoods because some people wouldn't get out of the pool when they had to close the pool down. Adults had to call the police to get them to leave.
Yeah.
So,
And literally,
I mean,
that becomes an issue. So it's kind of funny, but that's an HOA rule, right? When the pool closes.
mhm.
But once somebody, an agent of the owner, which the HOA is, says the pool's closed, you gotta leave, and they refuse, now they're trespassing. So that becomes a state law violation. So being in the pool after hours is an HOA rule thing. It's not even a violation.
Yeah.
Once they're asked to leave and they don't, then it becomes a problem. So
So I just want to point out that the property damage that the city incurred, of course, is significant, but the residents incur a lot of property damage during these events too. I don't know how many of them, their fences got torn down by sledding, or their shrubbery, or their cars get dinged on or scratched up, and then the behavioral issues that we've talked about in the past don't have a monetary value, but there is additional damages being done to people that we should also consider. So, I hate it's come to this, but
And oddly enough, that I know of, and it's kind of strange, but we didn't get calls from residents about these people using my properties to cut through the trespassing. I don't want them there. We didn't get those calls, so we did get calls about the littering, about the sledding on the golf course and that kind of thing, but that's what the calls were.
so, it seems like we don't need to do a resolution, but maybe we need to do a resolution so that the whole of BOMA weighs in or has an opportunity to at least.
What happens if that resolution fails? I mean, I agree with you. It'd be nice to have that backing, but at the same
If
time,
the resolution fails, then it's not the will of BOMA. I mean, I
but
think we have
but
to.
we have a trespassing ordinance. So I'm trying to think of what I agree with Chief Jones is that we have an ordinance, and we also have the ordinance that you have to use parks equipment for its intended use. I think I can go forward right now. It's been the two committees at this point. I haven't heard anybody to object. I'm okay with that. I mean, I appreciate that other opportunity, but
Yeah, don't mess it up. I'm trying.
Okay.
And we have to protect our residents from our lives.
Mhm.
If we send it to BOMA and
And they reject
they
it.
reject it,
Yeah.
then we haven't
Yeah.
kept the best interest of our residents.
It just feels a little like not the most transparent way to go about it, but you are correct. It's already the rule. We're just saying let's enforce it with more vigor than we have in the past. Or let's not continue to look away from it.
And all we're asking for is for
Direction.
the, right here, Public Safety Committee, or, to say, this is what we're gonna do. And then we'll go from there.
So the signage, you want the golf course commission to put the signs up, is that right?
It's no trespassing, and then temporary, no sledding signs during a bad weather event.
and we'll take care of the temporary. It's because I was thinking not only temporary yard signs, but also we have those big flashing highway signs, and if we get them out there before snow is coming, everybody's gonna know that.
We could park a message board in the golf course parking lot behind the closed gates. But, the problem too is, I think you had asked one time about a message board out there, and there's just not on Spyglass, that area out there, there's just not a safe place to put that sign where it won't get hit or cause a crash. But in the parking lot, obviously, people driving by there would be able to see that.
And people sledding, you can see the parking lot from where they're sledding as well.
Andy?
I was just gonna say, we added to the city code specifically for instance like this, misuse of city property a few years ago to be able to send them to city court. I mean, basically teenager jumping on top of shades at Mary's Magical Place. So, I mean, the typical fine, if you send them for trespassing to Sumner County, by the time we talk about, the judge will ask us what the damages are, they'll do court costs, it'll be $1,000 or more plus community service. If you cite them for misuse of city property, it just comes up here to city court, and I don't know, is the max fine still 50 or
Yes.
Plus the court.
plus
costs.
whatever community service they might come up with too. And if there was damages, you could do that too, I
But you
guess.
can't do a juvenile there.
Correct. And even at juvenile, we get them for damages. I mean, when somebody four wheels in the Sanders Ferry, police come out, do a report.
But can you use that charge at juvenile court?
No, you would have to use trespassing for juveniles.
And see, that
I just
creates
want
an
to make sure everybody
issue.
understands what you're going to have to do there.
That kind of creates an issue for us if we're citing juveniles in juvenile court for trespassing. But it's an adult and they wind up going to city court, which is less than, if we're gonna use trespassing, we're probably better off to use trespassing for everybody.
And the juvenile court, it's gonna cost them $1,000 there as well.
No, the juvenile
It
court
will-
costs
it
are
could have
less,
damages.
but if there's damages, it could run into over $1,000. But that's because general sessions and juvenile court have the authority under the law to assess damages. City court usually can't do that. I'm not saying they never can, but usually they cannot. Usually because it's a civil court, it's a fine and court costs. And again, like Mr. Gilly said, the judge can order community service. But it's easier for them to assess damages, if there are damages, at general sessions and or juvenile court, because they take that into consideration. Our officers a lot of times present documents to document damage done in a vandalism case or whatever, and the judges assess that as part of their penalty. With juveniles, again, the court costs aren't as high in juvenile court, and also they're more likely they would assess damages, but they're less likely to enact a fine. What they would probably do is community service. Whereas general sessions court, it could be community service, and sometimes they waive court costs. It just depends on the situation, and then a lot of times they'll do a fine in community service, and they'll But that, again, the judges up there have a lot of discretion to do what they feel is best to address whatever happens.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I realize we have to stop it. I kind of hate that we could have a juvenile go into juvenile court and community service and fines and court costs for sledding. I mean, it's a real balance. We can't handle $35,000 worth of damage on a golf course.
Yeah, but I have faith in our general sessions judges.
Did
I
you-
mean, in fact, one of them lives in Ward 5.
Mhm.
She lives there. So I think they'll use, don't you think, Judge, proper discretion? First
I do. I
offense.
think first time around, I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to throw the book at them.
No.
But I mean, my point is, it's literally up to the judges. It's not like city court where there's a set fine, a set court. There is set court costs, but fines can vary. And a lot of times, I've seen general sessions judges say half court costs and $5 fine. So I don't know that they still do that. I know they used to. And sometimes they'll have no fine and just do community service. But now they're real good about if there's damage, and say the golf course says, hey, we've experienced X amount of dollars worth of damage from this one event, they will assess the fines, or not a fine, but they'll assess a penalty to cover that damage because they feel like you shouldn't be out or you shouldn't be out the person who caused the damage should be responsible for that.
If there's no damage, could we leave it up to discretion, like here is your warning if you are caught back here? Or is
Oh,
that
sure.
gonna make it too hard on the officer?
And they
You
might
know,
end up going back time and time again for,
and if they come back, definitely.
Well, obviously, I can tell you our officers, as they deal with the same person another time for the same offense, they're gonna wind up getting charged. It's not gonna be warning, they're not. gonna
Because
get
in the past, we've never had the no trespassing and all of that put out there. So if we do a social media blitz that, hey, this is what's gonna happen, maybe start with the warnings unless they're done
But-
damage.
the officer should have discretion.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'm not gonna, they have that.
I think we move forward. So,
All right, any more discussion on that?
I will excuse myself if you're gonna move on to something
Okay,
else.
thank you for coming.
All
I
right.
hope that'll help you.
Yeah, I hope it'll help all of us. I know it's not gonna be without some pain but I guess it's just where we're at. All right.
thank you.
And we will get wording on the signs as to what the wording is gonna be to be enforceable.
Enforcement.
Thank
Okay.
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Thank you.
See you, Christopher Dress.
All right, UTV. Stinking everywhere. You wanting to start?
Of course, I've looked through all of this information and, the thing that really resonates for me is the differences in the response times. And the information we got back from the leagues is really interesting and valuable as well. But, I heard from the firefighter at Freedom Fest that they have not been able to take their vacation time. And so Chief Bush, I'm wondering, is there, regardless of if it comes from overtime pay or not overtime pay, do we have the manpower to man the UTV?
Right now, no. Ever since 7 has been opened, we've been kind of in a strain. Now you have to take into consideration we're 6 positions down. And then I have 3 folks that are, well, I'm 5 positions down, will be a 6th one as of the 19th of this month. And then I've had 2 FMLAs and then 1 that was on light duty for an extended period of time. So that affected, that's like having 3 vacancies on shift as well. So when you say 5, that really was 8 because you can't count those people because they're not going to be at work. And then as of the 19th of this month, it'll actually be 9. Now, since then, the guy that was on light duty has been released to come back to full duty. But we're still down 6 positions. We still have 1 person out on FMLA. Got 1 that's doing intermittent FMLA, working 12 hours, taking off 12 hours. And then we have 4 more coming up in the next 2 months that are taking FMLA as well. Childbirths, just various things that are going on. And it's really putting a pinch on shifts. I've got 48 staff members that accrue 21 hours of vacation leave a month. That's by policy, city policy. And those hours keep building if they can't get off. So we start fully staffed, we should be 37 people. But when you start having these gaps, it takes 29 to run a shift. Then you see the constraints that we have with staffing.
Have you been able, or will you be able to have it there at all?
Right now, without overtime, no. Maybe on 1 shift, maybe on a shift. And that's a coin toss. But I do know that there's,
With overtime,
well, again, overtime is if they choose to work that, right? We don't force that on them. We don't say, hey, you must work the UTV for overtime. That is by choice. We post the dates. We get the calendar from the Parks Department every month. and we post it and we let people sign up for that, that want it. If we have enough people on shift, if we need one person, we post it as one overtime. If we have enough on shift to cover it, then we don't post it for overtime. But we've not had that since April the 10th.
Well, I have looked at numbers till I'm gone cross-eyed with all of this. And when you compare the calls that the UTV goes on, let me back up and say, if we had buckets full of money and could put one in there, I would be for it. With that being said, we don't have buckets full of money. We have to think about the taxpayers' money, the citizens' money. When I look at the calls that the UTV went on compared to all these other calls, yes, there is a time difference. It's about 4 minutes. But we have calls all over the city that it's still the 4 minutes, to get people there. I don't see where it's a good return on investment to have it in there. Now, with that being said, big events, Freedom Festival, tremendous tournaments, absolutely, I'm okay with that. But weekly practices, just weekend games, I don't see how we justify it at all.
What number of people in parks do you think justifies the UTV to be there? 3,000, 6,000?
I don't know, I mean, large events that
That's what,
Freedom Festival. When I was reading, it was interesting to read the comments from the different organizations. And one thing that I learned that I didn't know is they're required to have trainers there. So I went and did some research on what kind of certification and all that trainers have to have. And they actually have more training, I didn't know that, than EMTs. And all those tournaments are required to have trainers there.
I don't think you're correct on that.
Trainers can't administer medications. They can't administer IVs. There's certain things that trainers cannot do. Their scope of practice is not as large as an EMT's or a paramedics.
I know a paramedic, it's not.
It's not
they're
for
more, but
it's not for EMTs either.
The only people that are required to have a trainer since United Soccer if they're playing in a state league game.
And they are the ones who said they would be willing to financially contribute to having the UTV there because it's valuable to them.
They said they would cut trainers to have a UTV, so we impose a fee, an
But
additional fee.
that's not an option right now because
Because we can't
we don't
staff
have
it.
the staff.
But the firefighters have an option if they want to work overtime.
On the UTV, yes.
If they want. So what about having these organizations pay to have the UTV in there?
You asking me?
I'm just throwing it out there.
And we could certainly discuss it with them and see if they're willing to, but I think they're gonna be, frankly, I think they're gonna be really mad because citizens just helped us lobby for the tax increase, and then they're gonna perceive it as we've cut services. And then we want them to pay. I don't think it would go over well.
I'm just trying to look at the data. And if you compare the data that we were given,
One thing the data doesn't include though is how many times the UTV renders something that might be considered more of like okay, you really do need to go get stitches, or no, just clean it. And, if they don't, how would you say that would work? If they don't do a certain level of care, they don't write a report on it.
So it's kind of like a clinic, right? So you have clinics that pop up all over the place, And that's a choice that they would make versus going to an emergency room. So if they see the UTV in the park and they see medical staff over there and they've collided with a player and they've got a bump on their head or they sprain their ankle, they may say, hey, you think it's broke, right? We'll evaluate it. We'll look at it. Say, we really can't tell. You may want to go get x-rays. They may go hop in a car and get x-rays. They may put ice on it, wait a day and see what happens. And we don't track those numbers because that's not a true call. Our staff's there for those incidents as well, right? Now, obviously, if they administer any medications or start an IV or do anything that would change the course of a patient, then yes, they have to do a report or make a report. But somebody walking up that said, hey, I collided with Sally and Sally's got a bump on her head, and Sally goes over there and we look at Sally's pupils. She's not nauseated. We say, hey, keep an eye on her for the next 8 to 12 hours. If you see something change, you can take her to the hospital or call 911 and we'll respond. We do have quite a few of those when we're in the park that walk up and do that. And I've heard that from staff. It's not because I've been on the UTV.
Right.
It's from what they've told me.
I mean, looking at the email correspondence with Tennessee United, I mean, he said we have to have multiple trainers at our tournaments anyways. Would it be possible that we cut our trainers in half and pay them out towards the UTV fund? So, I mean, I don't think that they would have a problem with that.
Yeah.
If we wanted to charge.
I think they're definitely open towards that.
Keep in mind, Tennessee United only has 2 tournaments a year. They have one in the fall and one in the spring.
So it's not gonna be huge. But it sounds like they
That
want
would
them
help.
there.
Yeah, they have
But if
trainers
we're-
at their tournament,
if we're-
which is helpful because that means
This,
the response
the
time.
thing like, if we're interested in saying it for a threshold of how many people are in the park, but, you know, like you were saying, large events, but we need to define that and say, oh, we're gonna have the UTV there during those times, but then we have to have the UTV there during those times. Whereas now, we couldn't, if that were a policy, we wouldn't be able to because we don't have staff.
So may I say something? I'm not a member of the committee, of course,
Absolutely.
but I
Go
think,
ahead.
I think that the size of the event that requires it should be delegated to the staff. I don't think we need to get in micromanaging, 1,000 people or 2,000 people. And in those events, we do authorize overtime for those events.
Mhm.
But for the other event, when the other times, I'm just looking at these numbers now. The numbers don't justify it. In my opinion, they don't justify it. And I talked to 2 people today, one that just retired from a city outside of Las Vegas. He was a captain with the fire department. And I asked him, Gary Polk was his name. And I said, Gary, what does that fire department do? Oh, we don't provide, only to large events is the only thing we do. We don't provide, medical personnel at ball fields or athletic fields. And I also talked to someone, I don't know about Metro, but this fireman, a retired fireman, said that Metro doesn't do it either. So, I mean, we're kind of an anomaly. And to me, the numbers don't justify it. I mean, I'm just looking.
That's where I'm having an issue, the numbers.
How many people do you think that, I mean, you're not gonna be able to answer this with accuracy, but an average practice day, how many people would be in the park?
Oh gosh, probably 800.
So-
Let's give him.
When you asking me?
Yes.
At Drake's Creek, I would say it is an anomaly to begin with, to your point. On just an average league Tuesday night, when we have to force or volunteer police officers to do traffic control, you could start on one end of the park and have rotating in and out 500 to 600 flag football players, senior men's softball. Then you could have a middle school baseball league, middle school softball league. You could have Hendersonville High School baseball game going on, which could be a big crowd depending on the opponent. Hendersonville High School softball, all in one quad. Civitan youth baseball, Civitan fast pitch softball. Then you cross the creek and you have 2,000 kids soccer leagues rotating in and out of practices. Plus Hendersonville High School soccer. All that could be going on in one, and that's not an event, that's a regular night, which I think
How
this
many
is,
people would that be?
it could be thousands. This is where we were 4 years ago also, because when the UTV first started, it was used only at events or tournaments. So but then it became such that the leagues grew so much that regular nights for regular residents were sometimes you can have more trouble getting in and out of the park on a regular league night than you can on Saturday if there's a 80-team softball tournament. That's where it became such a, what are we serving our residents? Are we serving our guests? That's where it became an everyday thing. 4 or 5, maybe 5 years ago at this point. So this is kind of full circle. And I agree. At a lot of cities, they don't have it. But in most cities, they have, like Murfreesboro, for example, Barfield Park, you've got like 6 in and outs and maneuverability.
And we don't have that.
I think that's the issue. And I want everybody to understand, I don't think Chief Bush and I are not here to speak for or against. We understand the whole program of what's going on and how many people and how hard it is to navigate the park. And then, data, I've told Jesse this several times, data is great. Data, when Chief Bush texts me and says, UTV is not in the park, 911 call, broken leg on HHS soccer field, and I'm in the middle of dinner. Or someone has a heart attack and I go sit with their family at the emergency room. That's hard to put in data. And I understand where he's at with staffing. We could say, yes, we want it in there every night. And if he doesn't force overtime, it may not be in there. For a long time, police had to force overtime to direct traffic to get people in and out of the park. Right now, they're signing up for it pretty regularly. I don't think they've had to force people in the last year. But prior to this last couple of years, when I think you can equate that right or wrong with the economy and people working, they had to force people to work. Chief Jones can tell me if I'm wrong, but the fire department is not forcing people to do that. And I think that's why we're here. We're trying to figure out what does BOMA want in terms of servicing the park. I mean, if you never want to spend overtime on it, then we won't have it because he doesn't have the staff to do that. He might once he gets more staff.
I'm curious as to how many people were in the park before Freedom Fest.
I'll be able to tell you in about a week because we just subscribed to a program that'll ping every unique device that comes in the park. I mean, it's typically, we estimate 5,000 to 1,000-ish. It's hard to say because people do rotate around. So
It was a
Is
lot.
that more or less than like this Tuesday that you just described with all the similar?
Very good question. I would say if you compacted every person into that space, you would see probably a similar sized crowd. If you took everybody at soccer and everybody at baseball and everybody at softball and you put them in one parking lot down by the football field, you have a pretty big crowd.
That we need the UTV more on a typical or maybe that's atypical, on this random Tuesday that you've described, than we do at Freedom Fest, because at Freedom Fest, the parking is blocked off, and if a fire truck needs access, they can easily come, whereas.
No, you need the UTV for
Well,
They
but
took 7 people out with heat exhaust.
Because
it was hotter.
Can't
yeah.
move
too
around.
many pedestrians.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
pedestrian
Density.
traffic at Freedom Fest is unbelievable.
And this Jesse and I've talked about this before, but another thing that this whole conversation brings to mind that I can't leave unsaid is we need a detailed evacuation plan for the park. We've talked about before with violence and other things that it's not if, it's when. And I think our plan right now is just everybody panic. I mean, how would we get thousands of people out of the park? Yeah, That's something y'all need to think about.
Are you directing that? Amanda?
I'm just putting it out there in the universe because it's not like I have any good ideas.
If you staff the UTV, you're gonna reduce the manpower at the fire stations, and that is gonna harm all the,
I won't drop unless he tells me or the mayor tells me I will not drop below 3 people on front line of apparatus.
Good,
I'll never do that.
good.
Unless he tells me or the mayor and I want that in writing, I will not drop a frontline piece of equipment below 3 people.
Right now, it's just not an option, except on the one shift.
And you have to also realize we've just got through testing. We've got a list. We're getting ready to make some job offers. These folks won't start recruit school till August. They won't be done till November. I have a guy that's retiring in October. I've heard rumors of 2 more that haven't come forward yet. Those folks won't start school till February. We won't see them on the street till May. So it's just a continual cycle, right? And then you can't predict illnesses, injuries, FMLA, and then you've got these gaps. And it is what it is.
so really, there's no way to staff it, even if we wanted to. So it's kind of a
Well-
mute point.
Not without overtime.
Not without overtime.
Double time. Is it double time?
Time and a half. Time and a half.
I don't think it took, well,
And the call volume, I just don't see that it warrants.
And when they're not being able to take their vacation time, I mean, you've heard some complaints about that at Arena Festival. I mean, do you think they would even want to work overtime when they can't get their vacation time in?
I think the problem comes in is when, I don't want to get on a tangent, but you start looking at forcing folks to work 48 hours, right? You're affecting their normal life, right? Because we work 24, all 48. So when we don't have enough staff to do daily operations, as I just got finished saying, we're going to have 3 people on pieces of equipment. If that means he and I coming out of the office or bumping in a division and a battalion, it'll trickle down, right? Because we're not going to cut the community service with our 911 response. It's problematic when you start forcing people to work 48 hours because it affects their mentality. It affects them in the field, right? It affects a lot of things that they do. If they're at a very busy station and they lose sleep for 2 days, I mean, can you imagine at my age, and I have some folks that are my age that lose sleep for 2 days. Their skill set's going to be a little bit slower, right? Their reactionary times are going to be slower. They're not going to think as clearly. So, I mean, you start getting into a gamut of a lot of things when you start forcing overtime on folks. I mean, they've dealt with it for years on forcing overtime to people, and they do it an 8-hour burst. We do it for 24 or 12. And that's not an easy feat, right? A normal work day for folks is usually 8 hours. We're working 24, right? 2 o'clock in the afternoon versus 2 o'clock in the morning. And we're expected to perform the same regardless of the hour or the time.
So that makes me almost I wouldn't want them to work overtime.
But if we don't have, I don't disagree with you.
If they can't fully function during the
I don't
regular
disagree
hours.
with you, but we have to service the community, right? So that's why we can't drop below 29 people. And if we're below 29 people like we are a lot of the time right now, we have to staff it up. We have to say, here it is. We're not forcing on you. We want you to choose to do it. But if you don't choose to do it, then we're going to have to take other measures.
And we do have fire and ambulance that's gonna get into the park. It just may be a little slower.
It will be slower depending on the density, depending on where the call's at.
Again, impacts pre-hospital care, which impacts patient outcomes. And the number 1 call type was a seizure and heart attacks. I expected it to be bone fractures and such, but that wasn't the case. It's serious stuff. It's not.
but there's 12 all year.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's 12 all year.
Yeah.
Well,
But
there's
how many
30.
were there on?
There's 30. There was 12 that the UTV responded to. The other 18 was responded to by apparatus because the UTV was not staffed. I'm not saying, again, that's double the number, right? A little over doubling the number, but there's 30 total that we responded to using engines and the UTV.
I voted for the UTV when it came before Bowman, but that was before Station 7. And I understand the stress that fire department has because of personnel. So I'm all in favor of paying overtime, all we need to staff the fire stations. But I don't think these numbers justify spending time and a half of taxpayers' money to have somebody on a UTV in the park. That's my read on it.
Is it possible to have, if the practices are happening like from, I don't know when they happen, like 3 o'clock to 10 p.m., can we pay overtime and have somebody work just 7 hours instead of the whole?
That's what we do.
Oh,
It's
okay.
through the week. You typically, I mean, Andy, you correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've seen on the schedule, a Monday through a Thursday typically is like a 5 o'clock till 10 or 11 at night. So it's a 5 or 6 hour shift. And then your Friday night, Saturday night, Sundays are usually your 11, 12, 13 hour shifts.
I think one of my concerns is I'm hearing you say that you've got staffing problems right now, not enough staff. So what happens if somebody quits?
Well, I mean, again, we're fixing to go through that as of the 19th of this month.
I mean, somebody you don't know about.
I'm one more person, FMLA, or quit or go somewhere else or give the job up or whatever away from having a staffing crisis.
Let's define that.
I mean, if I can't find people to work overtime, there'll be a discussion that he and myself and the mayor would have to have is where are we going to move the people? Because I'm not, well, I mean, so like if I can't staff an engine company with 3 people, I'm not going to leave 2 on it.
No.
That's not adequate response. And so that would be a discussion we would have to have is what we're going to do moving forward. Does that mean he comes out and rides as a division or a battalion and we force one of them on a piece of equipment? I mean, there's some options out there, but I mean, you're changing the scope of his job, right? I need him in the office to help me, with all the stuff that I've got going on. But again, we're here to protect the community and we're willing to do whatever we need to do. But I'm one person away, I feel like, from having an issue. Just my 100% complete honest speaking about it.
Include, one of the options would be what? Shutting down an engine for one of the shifts? One of the 3
Could be.
shifts?
That would be a discussion that, as I said, that him and the mayor and myself would have to have.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that without their permission.
I mean,
Yeah.
is it possible in those situations, emergency situations, that you would assign a captain at a station to be able to make sure that station was fully manned in just an emergency?
You saying just keep
Higher rank.
put one person in that station?
No. If you're one short in a station and you don't have any more staff, you can't use overtime to incentivize that. You can assign a captain.
Well,
Say, hey, captain, we need you to work this shift at such and such station.
Well, I mean, that would be an option. Again, that would be something that we'd have to do, but you're going to change the morale of the organization when you start telling people, because.
And it's not an emergency one day, it's through November when you get more firefighters.
And it's, so when I say that, right, so today I come to work and we're short staffed and I have a division chief that says, firefighter so-and-so, you're staying today. Well, what if they've already paid for a vacation and they were supposed to leave, right? You get into those dilemmas and those happen, and that will change the morale of an organization overnight.
What about the SAFER grant? Have you heard anything?
No, sir, not yet.
When
Wait.
do you hear on that?
Well, I mean, we put in for the AFG, right? So we're waiting for the AFG. I figure that'll be the end of August. We probably won't hear anything from the SAFER till almost the end of the year. And that was for those 6 positions that you granted us.
So, Jesse, have you, the chief, talked about those emergency scenarios and how we would cover?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had the option arise yet. We have the battalion chiefs who could come down and ride on, on Chief Bush said that's a bit of a change from their status. We have those options we can avail ourselves to. We haven't yet. Hopefully we don't. Having 5 guys positioned short, and the academy only goes twice a year. So we have to wait till the academy to get those positions backfilled. On top of that, we have some guys out on FMLA, so the combination of those things isn't real conducive to, having additional staffing. So we haven't had to do any of those things. Hopefully we don't. But I think the first thing we do is probably have some of those battalion chiefs come down and grab that equipment, or we're gonna have to figure something out how to do it.
So if we're gonna have to use any overtime, it's probably gonna be at the stations.
Yes. I'm all for that.
I mean, if you have to get them to work an extra shift.
Yeah, and so, one of the things we're working on right now is the staffing analysis since Seven's been open. I mean, BOMA asked us to look at staffing when Seven's open, so we're putting together a rather detailed staffing analysis of what our day-to-day looks like with 7 open, so that we can share that with BOMA, and that's something that we're just doing on a day-to-day basis, where we're getting those reports and just putting it in something where we can look at it on paper to kind of show what the staffing position is with the stations.
And then talk about
So since April the 10th, since Station 7 is opened, A shift has required 175.25 hours of overtime. B shift has required 544 hours of overtime, and C shift has required 691.5 hours of overtime. So since April the 10th to current date, we've required 1,410 hours and 1,410.75 hours of overtime. Now that some of that falls in last year's budget, right? Because we're in a new budget cycle. But right now, with the vacancies that we have, again, this is going to run through November. I'm going to have some folks retire in October. Those numbers will then flip and run through May. So you can expect this number to stay pretty consistent.
When are the 2 fire academies? What month?
August and February. August 28th and then late February as well. So 10 weeks.
Too late to
So-
get any more into the August class, pretty much.
Well,
I mean,
no.
those fill up.
So here's the deal with that too. We've run into some issues with the State Fire Academy. All of these agencies have started dumping names, right? Or not really names. They're saying, hey, I reserved me 7 slots. And then come academy time, some of them won't produce 7 people. Well, the academy has counted on those 7, right? And so now they're requiring names. You can't just say, hold me 6 slots. You have to have names to go in those slots. And that's what we're doing right now. We just went through the interview panel Monday. We're getting ready to make job offers to get these folks through the pre-screening cycles, get them to get 2 weeks of notice to their other jobs if they have them. And then we're going to get those folks lined up to be in the academy August 28th.
And then they'll be ready to go.
They'll be on the street hopefully by November the 10th or the middle of November.
So if we can hang on to, keep our fingers crossed to.
But then you've got, like I said, you've got retirement in October. I've got some more folks that are going out on FMLA in August, and it's going to be 12 weeks. Some of them can choose to use 12 weeks. I can't control that. That's a state law, a federal law. They can use that however they want to. They can come in and work a shift and then take off the next 2. There's so many things with FMLA that we can't touch. It's hands off, and it just affects staffing levels.
How much is 1,400 hours of overtime roughly? Can you put that in a dollar amount?
I mean, if we took an average senior firefighter salary, I mean,
It's about 50,000. It's about half a year for a firefighter. I think it's about 2,600 hours a year as a firefighter. So 14.
it's about $52,000.
Probably half that.
And I have 90 in my overtime budget. So you're
And
saying,
we have people working 48 hours straight.
So some people are going to retire in October?
yes, sir.
Have they turned in their papers?
One of them has.
So
The other 2 have not
is
come
it,
forward.
is it possible that we could go ahead and hire
Another one.
to get in
Not until the positions are vacant.
the school?
I've asked that before, and we've always been told no, not until the vacancy's there.
I know
Because
it would take action of BOMA.
Yeah.
To do that, an amendment to the budget. But I mean, if we know we're going to have one, why don't we go ahead and hire that person to get them in
Get
the
them
academy?
October, and then that'll help our numbers.
Yeah.
We don't have time to do an ordinance. The time to do this was time before last when Chief Bush told us this was gonna happen. And we rejected the Safer Grant.
No,
No, we did not. We
The
gave six
time
positions.
before that.
oh, the time before, this last time we approved it.
Said,
Because we
but
wanted to
that
see
was
how
clearly too late.
It just seems like to me that we did, I don't know, have an emergency moment meeting to approve a budget amendment to get this one person that we know we're gonna have
But does one person do it, or do you have to have 3 people? I don't know the answer to that. Isn't it like, there's a reason the Safer Grants are in
Multiples of 3.
multiples of 3, yeah, so. There's one person,
So the one person I think Mr. Roberson is talking about is we're going to replace the person that's retiring.
Yes.
The other 2 that have not come forward, they may or may not leave. I don't know that, but we do know that this individual is 100% leaving in October. He's already turned in his paperwork. He's filed for his retirement. So we know that that potentially could be a 7th person.
Yes.
And
replace that, and then you have 2 people get hurt, heaven forbid.
right, then you just start the cycle again. Like I said, you can't predict that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we can't distribute injuries throughout the calendar year as we wish, so in my experience, they cluster together. But
I definitely think we should get one more on Boma.
So I think this committee needs to direct the staff, and take whatever actions necessary to accomplish that.
I need to understand if one
Is better than none at this
If
point.
one, but does one person keep us away from facing the possibility of shutting down? I don't even want to talk about shutting down an engine. Or does it have to be 3? I don't understand that. And I need to really see that.
So you're doing 1 for 1 for the retirement. But if you're wanting to add staff, you would have to do multiples of 3.
Yeah.
So you'd have to do, if based on what you're saying, you would have to do 4 more because you're covering the retirement and then you're adding 1 person per shift.
This action is just backfilling of
Yeah.
what we know is
The
going to
one.
happen. We know it's going to happen. So it's backfilling.
And then if the other 2 that are talking decide we've missed the opportunity for the academy,
There's another one in
Until-
February.
which means they come online in May.
It's 10 weeks.
So that's when it starts. That's not when they're ready.
Yeah.
So. Okay. We probably need to move on.
Chief Jones, could you, I've had a few complaints about motorized vehicles on the Greenway.
Sir.
Can you just tell us the law on the Greenway?
So we've had some complaints, and I've already sent that out to patrol. I think the mayor notified me of a couple complaints that we have, and we sent that out to patrol that mini bikes, motorcycles, golf carts are not allowed on the Greenway by any shape or form or fashion. The mayor had asked about the battery powered bicycles, and the issue with that is it's still a bicycle, and the Greenway is open to bicycles and pedestrians. So it would be virtually impossible for our officers to enforce that because it is, you get into the gray area of, well, were they pedaling or were they using the battery? And then when the officer sees them, even as far as the state law is concerned, mini bikes are not allowed on the street. And, mopeds under certain conditions, they have to meet state law requirements under some conditions, but they strictly consider electric bicycles. And so their theory is, I believe, and I don't really want to speak for the state legislature, but that the batteries there is just an assist. And so it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for our officers to enforce that with any, but literally I've already told them to be on the lookout for mini bikes, golf carts, go-karts, motorcycles, anything like that on the Greenway, and to cite as they see fit if they find people on the Greenway, because that's strictly prohibited. And so, that applies to the walking track that's in Drake Creek Park, the Greenway, There's a little confusion on, and I always remind everybody, the linear park between the railroad bridge and the library, we patrol that for criminal activity, but as far as park rules and stuff, that's not owned by the city. That's owned by the Business Owners Association up there. So park rules don't actually apply there, and we can't enforce them there. I mean, any criminal activity they uncover there, obviously they can enforce, but then again, it's state law violation. So, but several weeks ago, when the mayor made me aware of it, I had put out to our patrol units to be extra patrol and be, be observant of that, try to watch for people on the greenway, get them off. My understanding was some folks on golf carts thought that was a convenient way to get to, I believe, one of the restaurants or two of the restaurants and a couple other locations. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work.
Could we put a sign there saying what's illegal on there?
I want to say that's already posted. I won't.
Do you know?
There was some discussion when the Greenway first opened, and I think it's already posted,
No,
but I don't want to.
yeah, I don't know if it is, but we can, absolutely, we
I
can
don't know
say
if that
if we have a problem, like a reoccurring
Is the
problem.
Greenway posted, Andy?
For,
For like
Motorized vehicles.
you know?
parts of it may be, the new part, is what we're talking about specifically, the new Greenway.
Mhm.
The new Greenway is not yet.
Okay.
It's not authorized by the city code to have motorized vehicles. Electric bikes are not included in that. They are considered.
That's what we just went over. So
The only signage we have on the new Greenway thus far is the no fishing on the piers signs. And we are in the process of putting up signs about speeding and sharing the trail with bikes and walkers. But we do not have know this, know that, know this signs.
literally, one of the complaints we got was about it was specifically a bicycle. They said the person riding the bicycle was riding excessively fast.
That is an issue. That is
Yeah.
a growing issue, actually. The bicycles are. We have a great bicycle community. I love them. They will fly on all our greenways, and if you're not paying attention, you got to get out of their way. The bicyclists have got to do their job. There's like etiquette when you're riding a bike on a greenway. And there's etiquette when you're walking slow too. If we need to put that, let me know. We will.
Have you had it?
We can, but I've already told our people to watch for that. I mean, I would think most folks should know that is a walking trail, not a golf cart trail. But again,
Have you had any more complaints about people on their
Golf
riding
carts.
golf carts and things?
I've not had one complaint about a golf
Okay.
cart on the new greenway.
Dickie Moran complained about it.
Yeah, he did.
Dickie told me.
At least I don't remember him complaining.
We have it in our neighborhood on our greenway.
I've definitely heard it on greenways and neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Golf cart complaints.
and a lot of those are owned by HOA, which
They are.
again presents as private property. So that presents another problem
Right.
for us because if we catch them on the street, that's different. We'll deal with that because they're not allowed to be on the roadway.
Yeah.
But the one, literally one of the issues they dealt with, and people that own the golf cart said, well, we've got it registered, we've got headlights, and we've got this and that. And I said, yeah, but the issue is you can't allow your 12-year-old to drive it up and down the roadway. That's not, the state law does not allow that. They have to be a licensed driver under state law in order to operate.
We're having more and more people drive their golf cart from their neighborhood to even Breaks Creek Park. Like just putting their baseball and softball equipment on there and driving to the park.
And
How they got there, I don't know.
well, so
Sometimes.
according to the state law, if they meet the requirements, low-speed vehicles, they have low-speed, medium-speed designations now. And literally, a low-speed vehicle can drive on residential streets and cross a state highway. They can't drive on a state highway, but most of the battery-powered golf carts that's being utilized do not meet the minimum state requirements. So,
Anybody have anything else?
So would you like to recommend that staff with the city attorney prepare a resolution for staffing when we know a non-retirement is coming up?
And request the mayor to have a special call meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think with the recommendation of this group, that's within our purview to go ahead and do it this time, but it would be nice to have a resolution. Because the budget does approve staffing numbers. We're gonna be below those staffing numbers right now with the vacancies that we have, so.
Yes, let's
So we don't
please
have
get
to
that on
amend
there.
the budget, we just have to have a resolution. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
I'll get with
Okay.
Lance, I just wanted to make sure that was the direction of the board.
Yes.
We'll go ahead.
So we need to have a special
What's the
call
deadline?
meeting and then Bowman needs to have a special
Deadline
call
for
meeting.
to
Because
get
that
in.
has to go. to
August
the meeting,
28th is the, when the
And
academy
then it has
starts.
to go to Bowman.
Well, I'm gonna do that as soon as
And
they
then
can.
there we
Pretty
can
soon.
get this
We'll start
done
now,
before
as soon as I make
August.
the
So
deadline.
I think we're okay to do it now, but it'd probably be good to have a resolution.
So we don't have to have a special call for this one?
But from August through October, you're gonna have one extra person that's not accounted for in salaries and benefits.
Yeah, that's something I'll look at with you, but I think we'll figure out some way to make it happen, and we can go with something official and develop a
So
plan.
from here
Good.
forward, if he has someone that's turned in retirement paperwork, he can go on and hire.
Yeah, and we have Station 7 open now, which wasn't open in the past, so the requirements are now different with another apparatus, right? That's another 3 guys on each shift too, so we don't have to adjust how we do some of the hiring. It would be really nice if the academy had more than, twice a year, so we didn't have to wait 6 months between. But that's something Chief Bush and I will look at.
And that way he can
consult with
just
the city
move.
attorney.
You have
So
our
I'll bring
approval
something back to this committee as well.
that he's good to go ahead and hire that other one to get him to go in August.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be a problem. Do that.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
I had a bottle of water and it just